Hello everyone, MacLeod here with another story from the realm of the dice. Today is a special day because it's my 10th video, but also because I've accumulated 100 views. Because of you lovely people watching. Thank you so much. Today we're going to look at a post about how not to introduce a new player to D&D, and also what D&D can do to certain people who feel like they're lacking control in their lives. Power dynamics, the likes. Let's look at the post. So my first time playing D&D, a friend at work asked me if I wanted to play, and my response was, "What's D&D?" He explained the concept and had me come over on Saturday to roll a character for a Sunday game that he would DM. On Saturday, I show up and end up rolling a monk. He also loaned me a 3.5 player's handbook so I could familiarize myself with how the game works that night and be ready for the game the next day. Already, this is a bit of a huge ask for someone who's never played D&D before or any tabletop. To ask them to just look at the player's handbook from a D&D edition and then just know how to play the next day. That's already a terrible start. I show up for the game on Sunday and I'm treated like I'm a veteran player. I get heavy size and insulted for not having actions ready on my turn and not understanding how combat works, and was told that it was unacceptable that I had to borrow dice instead of bringing my own. I explained that it was my first time playing, and the response I got was that I had been given the player's handbook the night before, so I should know what I'm doing if I had bothered to read it. Also, I couldn't ask anything out of character at all. There were no system for out-of-character conversation. Keeping in mind that I had only learned of the existence of D&D like 3 days prior to this, so asking questions like, "What is a bugbear?" or "Which dice do I roll for persuasion?" I would get in-character responses to those questions. "You're a monk and don't know what a bugbear is? What kind of monastery did you train at?" And "Why would you play with dice right now when we're trying to talk to the king?" I also had my player agency taken from me at every turn, since I didn't know what I was doing. 2 specific examples. First one, we open a chest with armor and weapons in it, and we are all told that we each take something from the chest. DM goes around the table asking each player what they want. You wanted a 2-handed sword? Okay, here's a +1 greatsword, and here's your +1 studded leather, etc. He gets to me, the monk, who is wearing no armor and gets bonuses for not using weapons, and I tell him that, no, I'm good. He makes me take a weapon anyway, despite my protests that I would never use it. Mine was a homebrew tekukagi, and as a monk I still had to take the penalties for using a weapon, so still doing less damage than empty-handed. After he gets all the way around the table, he says that the weapons and armor are all cursed, and they're now our most prized possession. We would rather die than part with our new item, and we will suffer damage anytime we have the chance to use the item and don't. This is a very typical example of a bad DM. I say this because clearly, first of all, the DM did not actually have appropriate loot for the monk. Even so, then turning around and say, also, the items are cursed, by the way, and you don't want to get rid of them anymore, is clearly a stab at our monk player here. Don't get me wrong, you can definitely use cursed items in your games, it's just you need to use them with care, otherwise they're going to be extremely obnoxious or just annoying to deal with. Second time was that we ran into a something. I don't remember what she was and couldn't ask what she was anyway. I just remember that she was evil, very powerful, and apparently so hot that we all wanted to do what she told us to, because of how hot and powerful she was. This was probably a succubus. Anyway, when she first walked up, she asked a question and I answered it. She ran up and smacked me because I dared to talk to her without specifically addressing me. So I'm like, f it. I pull out my tekukaki and strap it on my hand. The DM looks at me and says, "No you don't. She can kill you in 1 turn. Just sit there and shut up and I'll tell you when you can do something." At the end of session 1, we have just enough experience to level up. We level up our character and leave. I see him at work the next week and tell him that I don't think D&D is for me. His response was that everyone thought that I did great for my first time playing, and they were excited for me to come back and play again next weekend. Surprise Pikachu face? So like most stories on this sub, I go back even though I shouldn't have. At least the OP knows that they shouldn't have gone back. Clearly, those people need a punching bag, that's what it is. At some point that week, the DM does something stupid at work. It's a very minor thing, I don't even remember what it was, but it was enough that me and a couple of other guys joked with him about it. Again, it was nothing, and getting joked with for minor things like this was normal among us at work, him included, so it wasn't like he was being singled out. It was just normal workplace banter that he also takes part in when others screw up. I show up for the game on Sunday. We sit down, and he asks me for my character sheet. I hand it over. He looks for about 30 seconds and says,
take your dex down from an 18 to a 16, taking your +4 to a +3. Also, subtract 500 experience, making you level 1 again.
He hands me my character sheet back and watches me make the changes, also walking through taking my character back down level 1, subtracting HP, etc. After I finish, he looks me in the eye and says,
"Maybe that will teach you to not run your mouth at work."
He was watching for my reaction, so I just shrugged and said, okay. I could tell he was pissed that I didn't get upset about him screwing with my character. I didn't care, because it didn't even feel like my character at this point. It felt more like I was playing an NPC for him. My 2 examples of losing player agency above, the first example happened in the first session and the second example happened in the second session. Shortly after,
"Just sit there and shut up and I'll tell you when you can do something,"
we took a break. I went out to my car and left. Monday he told me it was messed up that I just left like that, and me not being there screwed up his encounter, so I was kicked from the group. He sounds like he was a terrible DM anyway. I responded by joking about his work screw-up the week prior. I made copies of my monk character sheet, and anytime he tried to joke me about work, after that, I just give him a copy of the character sheet and ask him which stats to reduce. This actually got the attention of another coworker who I ended up playing D&D with, after a lot of convincing, and actually enjoying the game. That's the end of the post. Thank God that this misadventure at least had a happy ending, and OP is now happily playing D&D with someone else who's probably a lot more competent at what they do. This is a very typical example of a DM that's not just bad at what they do, but they DM because they need a power fantasy to fulfill their probably very sad lives in some way. Clearly this guy at work needed some sort of control in his life, and being a game master for D&D was it. So having someone under you like that, which you have power over at the game, but not power over at work, is typically what very petty people do who need some sort of outlet for that helplessness. Good for the OP that they walked away and are now playing a better game. That's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you liked it, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.